Hi, I want to talk today about the second half of the narrative. I want to introduce the second half. I want you to keep looking as you read, keep looking for things that show how the narrative of the life undercuts slave ideology. But I want to shift the focus a little bit, and I want to look at another aspect of the narrative and the ways in which the narrative shows the growth of Frederick Douglass's personality, especially his sense of freedom and autonomy. So, when we think about freedom, we need to think about this a little bit. Of course, it's a core American value. When people think of America, they think of freedom, maybe money, but they think of freedom a lot. But the question is, what does it mean? And I bring this up because I often see what I think are clearly misconceptions. The first misconception, I think, is the idea that freedom means doing whatever you want. Well, think about it. Okay, the drug addict here wants to take her drugs and she takes her drugs. Therefore, she is free. I got to say, that is not really how I'm going to define freedom. This person is not free um, by any stretch of the imagination. So I think doing whatever you want is really not going to be adequate. Another misconception I see is the idea that it is a binary state. In other words, you are either free or you are not. In this view, Frederick Douglass, throughout the book, is not free. He is a slave. And once he escapes to the North, then he is free. The problem is, what if he gets to the North and he's subject to stereotypes and racism and unfair treatment? Is he really free? Well, he's more free than he was in the South, for sure. But is he really free? Uh, in this view, I think it just doesn't match reality. The boss may be free; he can do whatever he wants at work and tell all the workers what to do, and nobody can tell him what to do. But maybe he has other bosses who are telling him what to do, or maybe he still follows the ethical system handed on to him by his parents or by society. And really, what he does is not really what he wants to do. Or maybe he's the boss, but he really doesn't want to be the boss of this job. He hates it. It seems to me you can be free in one area of your life, but not another, or you can have more levels of freedom and less levels of freedom. It's a matter of degree, not absolute either or kind of thing. And I think we can see this if we shift the definition a little bit and think of freedom as autonomy. Autonomy comes from the ancient Greek words auto, meaning self, and nomos, meaning law. So it literally means self law, being a law unto yourself. It means doing what you think is right for yourself by your own standards. So in this definition, you could be free and autonomous in some areas, but not in another. You might have a job that lets you work your own hours at your own pace, and it's doing something you like, and you're following your own values. But when you're home with, and let's say you're in an abusive relationship, and you're stuck in that abusive relationship, well, you're not your own person at that point. So you could be free in one area and not another. Um, it means doing what you really want on a deeper level. So the drug addict is not autonomous because even though she wants to take drugs, maybe she knows in her heart that taking those drugs is not right. It's not right for herself. Um, by your own standards. So maybe somebody is in an abusive relationship because maybe she was taught by her mom and dad, always obey, always follow what the man says. And maybe she was, everything in her upbringing and teaching taught her that. So that's what is right. She thinks it's right to obey this abusive person, but maybe that's not really her own standards. It's not really a standard that she's taken on and really has her heart into and really believes in at this point. So maybe being autonomous would mean uh, breaking out of that and forming her own value system. So that's the definition of autonomy. And I want to look at how the narrative of the life demonstrates these concepts and how Frederick Douglass develops greater autonomy as he goes. And I want to look at the different ways he does this. We see this already in chapters 6 and 7. One way that Douglass develops some level of autonomy is when he learns to read. And reading gave him access to the anti-slavery books. And these books gave tongue to interesting thoughts of my own soul, which had frequently flashed through my mind and died away for want of utterance. So in other words, he had a sense of the truths that they were saying, but he couldn't grasp hold of them. Now he can grasp a hold of those ideas. The reading of these documents enabled me to utter my thoughts and to meet the arguments brought forward to sustain slavery. I could regard the masters in no other light than a band of successful robbers who had left their homes and gone to Africa, stolen us from our homes, and in a strange land reduced us to slavery. This is a completely new perspective. Before, he was taught the perspective of the slaveholders, so he was constantly indoctrinated through symbol, through words, through teaching, that this is right, slavery is right, and this is the way the world works. Now he can suddenly see it for what it is. No, it's a criminal injustice. Now, going forward, everything he interprets will be interpreted autonomously. He'll be able to see that the way things are ordered and the way things are taught is not the way they really are. He can see them from this other perspective. He's gotten outside of his social bubble, and now he can see it from outside. So he's mentally autonomous. He can see his mind is now autonomous, or at least growing in its autonomy. This is why Frederick Douglass says that moving to Baltimore was the event that changed his life, and because it led to his autonomy here. It also led to an autonomy of values. Here, when Frederick Douglass is there, when Mr. Auld chastises Mrs. Auld and reprimands her for teaching Frederick how to read, Frederick suddenly learns a revelation. What my master most dreaded, that I most desired. What he most loved, that I most hated. That which to him was a great evil to be carefully shunned was to me a great good to be diligently sought. And the argument which he so warmly urged against my learning to read only served to inspire me with a desire and determination to learn. In other words, he is taking opposite values. He knows the values he's being taught are ways to control him. So as an instinctive way, he's going the opposite way. Now that may not be the best in the long term to simply take opposite values. This is something teenagers will go through. But as the book progresses, Frederick Douglass is going to develop his own values that are independent of the masters, and he will have his own sense of right or wrong. He can't always live by them. He can't always behave how he wants, but at least on a value system, he's not conforming to the values of the masters. Think back about how the slaves would often argue about who has the best master. Here, they were stuck in the value system of the masters. They were caught up into the same value structure. They were much less autonomous than Frederick Douglass is now, where he realizes what they say is good, I say is bad. So as you read the rest of the narrative, I want you to look at the way that the narrative demonstrates this growing sense of autonomy. Notice that the different ways that Douglass achieves autonomy. And I want you to think about how this is applicable to us. I think already it's very valuable to think for myself. I think about autonomy, and I think about how Douglass created his own value system and his own worldview, or developed it, we should say. And I want you to think about that for yourself. Think about how that could be applicable to your life. And as Douglass finds new ways to be autonomous, think about things that we can apply. In my opinion, this book, even though it was written about slave times and and reflected a very different environment and a different world. We don't have to deal with slavery anymore, but all of us want autonomy, and all of us can learn from this book how to be more fully autonomous. Okay, take care.